Here's the truth. America's greatest threat wasn't just protest, it was Black women leading the charge. For decades, the FBI tried to crush women like Angela Davis, Assata Shakur, and Fannie Lou Hamer. They wiretapped, lied, and tried to break their spirit, because these women inspired whole movements. But the system's fear only proved their power. Their resilience changed history. So let's never forget, these women's fight is our fight. Honor their courage, carry their legacy. History often spotlights great men and battles, but rarely the power of Black women. For generations, Black women organized, marched, and spoke truth to power, becoming the backbone of justice movements. Their strength made them targets for government agencies, especially the FBI under J. Edgar Hoover. The government saw their ability to inspire and mobilize as a threat to the status quo. Through COINTELPRO, the FBI used surveillance, misinformation, and infiltration to disrupt Black women leaders. These women were seen as the heart of the resistance. If you could break them, you could break the movement. Tactics included wiretapping, spreading lies, and public character assassination. The goal: isolate, discredit, and exhaust them until they gave up. But these women refused to break. Instead, they amplified their voices, turning government attacks into proof of the injustice they fought. Their resilience inspired communities, showing that true power comes from courage and truth, not force. The government's fear was a testament to their effectiveness. Black women's leadership shook the foundations of an unjust system. Their legacy is a reminder. Real change is born from those who refuse to be silenced. Angela Davis, a brilliant scholar and activist, challenged the prison industrial complex and connected racism, capitalism, and sexism. The FBI labeled her a dangerous agitator, placing her on the 10 most wanted list and charging her with conspiracy and murder, charges she ultimately beat. Davis used her trial as a platform to expose systemic racism, and after her acquittal, she became a global symbol of resistance. Assata Shakur, a member of the Black Liberation Army, was targeted for her militant stance and labeled a domestic terrorist. After a controversial conviction, she escaped prison and found asylum in Cuba, continuing to inspire activists worldwide. Claudia Jones, often overlooked, was a journalist and organizer who fought for Black women's rights and was deported for her activism. Each woman faced relentless government persecution. Their stories reveal how the state tried to silence radical Black women through surveillance, imprisonment, and exile. Yet they persisted, writing, organizing, and inspiring new generations. Their courage turned them into icons of defiance. The government's attempts to erase them only amplified their message. Their lives prove that ideas, and the women who carry them, cannot be caged. Their legacies continue to fuel the fight for justice. The FBI's COINTELPRO targeted Angela Davis because of her prominence as a Black communist revolutionary who spoke out against racism and state violence, a combination J. Edgar Hoover viewed as a significant threat. Her powerful, unifying message and ability to attract young, politically engaged followers made her a prime target of the program's explicit goal to prevent the rise of a messiah who could unify and electrify the militant Black nationalist movement. Her ties to the Communist Party USA. Davis was an outspoken member of the Communist Party's Che Lumumba Club, an all-Black branch. This affiliation attracted intense government scrutiny during the Cold War, which sought to neutralize communist influence in the U.S. Her membership was also the reason she was fired from her teaching position at UCLA at the insistence of then-Governor Ronald Reagan. Her connection to the Black Panther Party. While Davis primarily identified with the Communist Party, she worked closely with the Black Panther Party and was a prominent figure within the movement. COINTELPRO's goal was to disrupt and dismantle Black nationalist groups, and anyone with influence in these circles was a target. The 1970 Marin County Courthouse incident. This event served as the pretext for the FBI to place Davis on its 10 most wanted fugitives list. In the incident, 17-year-old Jonathan Jackson, whose brother George Jackson was one of the Soledad brothers Davis championed, staged an armed hostage-taking. During the escape attempt, several people, including a judge, were killed in a shootout. Because firearms legally purchased by Davis were used, a warrant was issued for her arrest, and J. Edgar Hoover publicly called her a dangerous terrorist. Her high-profile status. Even before the incident, Davis had a national platform as an academic and activist. The subsequent media coverage of her fugitive status, arrest, and trial turned her into a powerful international symbol of revolutionary struggle, which further elevated her profile and the FBI's determination to bring her down. Ultimately, Davis was acquitted of all charges in 1972. Her persecution, which led to her spending 18 months in jail, was widely seen as a politically motivated campaign to silence a prominent voice for radical change. COINTELPRO targeted Assata Shakur as a leader of the Black Panther Party because the FBI sought to dismantle the organization through assassination, false criminal charges, and other disruptive tactics, aiming to neutralize revolutionary threats and maintain the existing social and political order. Shakur was specifically sought by the FBI for her alleged involvement in bank robberies and wounding a police officer in 1972. Dismantling the Black Panther Party. A Senate report outlined the FBI's motivation for COINTELPRO as protecting national security, preventing violence, and maintaining the existing social and political order by targeting and neutralizing Black Panther Party leaders. Targeting revolutionary groups. The FBI created programs like COINTELPRO to disrupt and discredit groups they viewed as threats to the existing social and political order, including the Black Panther Party. Assata Shakur's specific involvement. Wanted for questioning. Shakur was wanted for questioning in connection with wounding a police officer on January 26, 1972 in Brooklyn. She was also sought for questioning after a bank robbery in the Bronx on September 1, 1972, and an armed robbery at a church in Brooklyn on September 14, 1972. Fannie Lou Hamer, a sharecropper turned activist, exposed the brutality of Jim Crow with her fearless testimony. She fought for voting rights, mobilizing the disenfranchised and co-founding the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party. Authorities tried to silence her with violence and intimidation, but her words, "I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired," became a rallying cry. Ella Baker, the movement's quiet architect, built organizations like the SCLC and SNCC, believing in collective leadership over charismatic figureheads. The FBI monitored her for decades, fearing her ability to empower ordinary people. Baker's strategy made movements harder to destroy. No single leader, no easy target. Both women faced constant surveillance and attempts to discredit them, yet they kept organizing, teaching others to lead and resist. Their work lives on in the strength of the movements they built. Hamer and Baker showed that grassroots power can outlast any attempt to suppress it. The FBI targeted Fannie Lou Hamer as part of its covert COINTELPRO operations because her voter registration efforts and growing national prominence directly threatened the segregated power structure in Mississippi. The FBI sought to neutralize Black nationalist leaders and disrupt the civil rights movement, which they viewed as a threat to national security. Challenging the white power structure. Hamer co-founded the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party, MFDP, in 1964 to challenge the legitimacy of the state's all-white delegation at the Democratic National Convention. Her powerful, nationally televised testimony about the violent suppression of Black voters exposed the hypocrisy of American democracy and embarrassed President Lyndon B. Johnson, encouraging voter registration. Hamer was a fearless and effective field secretary for the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, SNCC. Her grassroots work registering thousands of Black voters undermined the systemic disenfranchisement that kept white segregationists in power. Building Black economic power. Hamer's activism extended beyond voting rights to encompass economic justice. She launched the Freedom Farm Cooperative in 1969 to empower poor Black farmers and create self-sufficiency, which challenged the exploitative sharecropping system. Being an electrifying leader, COINTELPRO documents show the FBI was specifically concerned with preventing the rise of a Black messiah who could unify and inspire the movement, naming leaders like Martin Luther King Jr. as potential threats. Hamer's powerful oratory and resilience made her a unifying figure who the FBI sought to discredit. COINTELPRO tactics against Hamer and the MFDP. The FBI's disruption campaign was designed to prevent leaders like Hamer from gaining respectability and forming effective coalitions. This included tactics such as political sabotage. At the 1964 DNC, President Johnson preempted Hamer's televised testimony by holding an unscheduled press conference, though major news networks later broadcast her speech. Discrediting leaders, both black and white leaders at the time, including NAACP leader Roy Wilkins and President Johnson, dismissed Hamer and her cause. Johnson referred to her as that illiterate woman. Aggressive surveillance. While specific tactics against Hamer are still partially unknown due to redacted documents, COINTELPRO was known for using informants, harassment, and misinformation to disrupt civil rights organizations like SNCC and the MFDP. The FBI has since admitted to operations that violated the constitutional rights of targeted groups. The FBI's COINTELPRO program targeted Ella Baker because she was a prominent and effective black activist, and her emphasis on grassroots democratic organizing was viewed as a threat by the Bureau. As a key figure in multiple organizations, she represented the core of the black freedom struggle that the FBI, under Director J. Edgar Hoover, sought to surveil, discredit, and neutralize. Her role in the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, SNCC. Baker helped organize the founding conference for SNCC in 1960 and was a crucial mentor for the student-led organization. SNCC's focus on empowering ordinary black people and promoting group-centered leadership represented a major challenge to the existing power structure and was actively monitored and infiltrated by the FBI. Her commitment to grassroots organizing. Unlike many of the charismatic, male-dominated civil rights organizations of the era, Baker consistently championed a decentralized, bottom-up approach to activism. This was fundamentally at odds with the FBI's efforts to disrupt the movement by undermining its key leaders. Her strategy of empowering communities to lead themselves was seen as a dangerous and effective model for social change. Her extensive history in the civil rights movement. Baker's long career as an activist and organizer meant she was a foundational figure in many important organizations, including the NAACP and the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, SCLC. This made her a significant target for the FBI's counterintelligence operations, which aimed to destabilize the movement by targeting influential individuals. The FBI's broader racist surveillance agenda. The FBI under Hoover had a history of surveilling black activists and labeling them as extremists. The COINTELPRO program specifically aimed to neutralize black political dissidents, and Baker was a prime example of the type of influential black leader that the Bureau viewed as a threat to the racial status quo. The FBI's surveillance of Baker included recruiting informants to spy on her activities and glean information to undermine her activism. This was part of a larger pattern of the Bureau's efforts to disrupt and discredit the civil rights movement by sowing distrust and creating internal conflict. The FBI targeted Claudia Jones because she was a prominent black communist organizer who advocated for racial equality, women's rights, and anti-imperialism. The U.S. government viewed her as a threat to national security due to her political views, which contradicted Cold War anti-communist and white supremacist ideologies. While the most severe persecution against Jones occurred during the McCarthy era, before the official start of COINTELPRO, 1956, her case exemplifies the type of repression that COINTELPRO would later institutionalize against black radicals. The FBI's campaign against Claudia Jones. As a leader within the Communist Party USA, CPUSA, Jones was targeted under the Smith Act, which made it a crime to advocate for the violent overthrow of the government. The FBI used her influential articles and speeches advocating for equality and peace as the basis for these charges. Targeting of black radicals. Jones's status as a black communist made her a top functionary to the FBI, which tracked and sought to eliminate influential black radicals. The Bureau began surveillance on her in the 1940s and drew up plans for her detention under Director J. Edgar Hoover. Legal harassment and imprisonment. Jones was arrested and imprisoned several times. In 1955, after serving a prison sentence, she was deported to England. Authorities exploited her status as a foreign national, born in Trinidad, to forcibly remove her from the country. Discrediting and disruption. The FBI's actions against Jones were consistent with the goals of COINTELPRO, which later aimed to discredit, disrupt, and destroy perceived subversive organizations. The years of legal battles and surveillance took a toll on Jones's health and separated her from her family. Connection to COINTELPRO's methods. Though the FBI's harassment of Jones occurred in the years before COINTELPRO was officially formalized, her case is a clear example of the Bureau's tactics that would define the program. The Bureau used legal maneuvers and targeted surveillance to suppress Jones's activism, which it saw as threatening to the political and racial status quo. The focus on both her communism and her role in the Black freedom struggle foreshadowed how COINTELPRO would later target Black liberation organizations and activists in the 1960s. Audre Lorde, a Black lesbian poet and activist, wielded words as weapons against racism, sexism, and homophobia. She challenged both mainstream and activist spaces to embrace intersectionality and difference as sources of strength. The government feared her ideas, her ability to awaken consciousness and inspire solidarity among the marginalized. Lorde's essays and poems taught people to name their oppression and find power in their truths. She famously declared, "Your silence will not protect you," urging others to speak out. Her critique, "The master's tools will never dismantle the master's house," pushed activists to imagine new ways of creating change. Despite pressures to conform, Lorde's voice only grew stronger. Her legacy is a blueprint for intersectional activism and personal courage. Lorde proved that the most personal truths can spark the most profound change. The stories of Davis, Shakur, Jones, Hamer, Baker, and Lorde are blueprints for resistance. Targeted for their effectiveness, these women became symbols of defiance and resilience. Their struggles exposed the nation's deepest injustices and inspired global movements. Today's activists face new forms of surveillance, but the lessons remain: organize, speak truth, and build coalitions across identities. Their lives show that ordinary people can spark extraordinary change. Leadership is about service, not titles. Their legacy is a living force, guiding us in the ongoing fight for justice. We walk in their footsteps, carrying their vision forward.